Have you ever wondered why the U.S. suddenly moved its embassy to Jerusalem? It was a move that broke with decades of foreign policy. Well, the answer might not be where you expect, in the world of traditional geopolitics. Instead, it might be found within the domestic beliefs of millions of Americans. So today, we're going to unpack how these powerful internal forces are shaping U.S. policy toward Israel.
We've all seen the headlines, right? The U.S. embassy moves, the U.S. leaves the Iran deal. But what if the real reasons behind these massive shifts have less to do with international strategy and way more to do with powerful beliefs right here at home? That is the central question we're going to dig into.
Okay, so first up, Section 1, a major policy shift. To really get a grip on the forces at play, we first have to understand that these recent decisions weren't just small adjustments. They were a complete break from the past.
I mean, think about it. For decades, both Democratic and Republican administrations were super careful, always leaving the final status of Jerusalem up for negotiation. Moving the embassy completely shattered that long-standing status quo. And this wasn't just some sudden impulse. Our sources argue that it was actually the end result of years and years of dedicated work by some very influential groups inside the U.S.
So, who are these influential actors? That brings us to Section 2. The research we're looking at points to two major and, sometimes overlapping domestic forces that have a huge say in this policy.
So first, there's a really powerful theological and political movement called Christian Zionism. Now, for its followers, many of whom are American evangelicals, supporting the modern state of Israel isn't just a political stance. For them, it's about helping to fulfill what they believe is a divine, prophesied plan for the future of the world.
The second group is what's often called the pro-Israel lobby, and it's really important to get the phrasing right here. These are American groups and American individuals, not some kind of foreign entity. And believe me, they are far from being a single unified voice. This is a super diverse coalition that includes everyone from the Christian Zionists we just talked about to a whole range of American Jewish organizations.
And if you want to understand the sheer political weight of these groups, you really just have to look at the numbers. With a population of around 60 million, American evangelicals outnumber the American Jewish population by roughly 10 to 1. In a democracy, numbers like that translate directly into a massive potential voting bloc and, you guessed it, a whole lot of political influence.
So, on to Section 3, a prophetic worldview. We know who the players are, but what's the core belief that's really driving all this political action? To get the why, we need to dive into the specific theological framework that's at the heart of it all.
The engine driving this whole worldview is a system called dispensationalism. It got really popular back in the 1800s thanks to a guy named John Nelson Darby. He basically interpreted the Bible as a literal roadmap for all of human history, which he broke down into these distinct stages he called dispensations.
So Darby's theology splits all of history into 7 different ages. According to this belief, right now we're living in the 6th age, the age of grace. The 7th and final stage is the millennium, a 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. But, and this is the really crucial part, for that to happen, a very specific series of events has to unfold first. And this is where theology smashes right into foreign policy preferences. According to this dispensationalist belief, this checklist of events has to be completed before the second coming can happen. This creates this incredibly powerful religious reason to support policies that say solidify Israeli control over Jerusalem because it's seen as literally helping to fulfill biblical prophecy.
Moving on to Section 4, the mechanics of influence. Okay, so we have the belief system. But how does that turn into actual political power in Washington? Let's take a look at the nuts and bolts.
Well, the strategy is pretty straightforward and honestly very effective. Just like any other powerful interest group, the pro-Israel lobby uses the classic political playbook, directing campaign money to candidates who support their views, lobbying lawmakers directly, and getting the public fired up to keep U.S. policy aligned with their goals. But, like we said before, it is a huge mistake to think of this lobby as a monolith. It's not. There are some really significant divisions inside it. Just take the Iran nuclear deal. You had powerful groups on completely opposite sides. AIPAC, which often aligns with Israel's conservative government, fought tooth and nail against the deal. But at the exact same time, J Street, a more liberal group, was one of its biggest supporters. It's a perfect example of just how complex this coalition really is. So, Section 5, from belief to policy. Let's start connecting the dots. How did these actors, these beliefs, and these methods come together to directly shape U.S. foreign policy over the last few decades?
you can trace a really clear path of growing influence. Things really ramped up in the 1980s when the Christian right became a cornerstone of the Republican Party. It kept going under George W. Bush, where one source described this sacred and Manichaean aura coming out of the White House and influencing policy. And it all led up to the Trump administration, which finally put into action the very policies these groups had wanted for decades.
And check this out. President Ronald Reagan himself, speaking to a director of AIPAC, said he saw current events through the lens of biblical prophecy about Armageddon. I mean, that's just a stunning example of how these end times beliefs reach the absolute highest level of the U.S. government.
And this brings us right back to where we started. The policies that were put in place during the Trump administration line up almost perfectly with the wish list advocated by Christian Zionists for decades. Moving the embassy, recognizing sovereignty over the Golan Heights, leaving the Iran nuclear deal, these were all seen as huge victories, the culmination of years of focused ideological and political work.
So, in the end, what we're looking at is a really clear case of how deeply held beliefs at home can directly translate into major foreign policy decisions abroad. And that leaves us with a fundamental and kind of tough question. What is the proper role for these beliefs and the groups who hold them in shaping how a nation deals with the rest of the world? It's a core challenge for any democracy, and it's definitely something worth thinking about.